Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for Ask the Expert. I'm Catherine, and I'm the virtual coordinator at the National Aphasia Association. The National Aphasia Association is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote public awareness and understanding of aphasia, to promote research that aims to improve the lives of people with aphasia, and to provide support to all persons with aphasia and their caregivers. This fall, our Ask the Expert series is focusing on mental health, wellness, and aphasia. Tonight's topic is stress, depression, resilience, and aphasia with our expert, Dr. Rebecca Hunting Pompon. And at the end of tonight's webinar, we will be sharing more information about a new wellness challenge that we hope you'll take part in. So we've been collecting questions in advance about tonight's topic from our audience through our website. So thank you to those of you who submitted your questions. We'll be answering many of these tonight. If you have any additional questions about tonight's topic for our expert during the session, please enter them into the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to answer those as well. And now I'm honored to introduce tonight's expert. Dr. Rebecca Hunting Pompon is an assistant professor in the Communication Sciences and Disorders Department and director of the Aphasia and Rehabilitation Outcomes Lab at the University of Delaware. She has a clinical background in adult mental health and counseling. Her research focuses on aphasia, its rehabilitation, and the influence of psychosocial and cognitive factors on aphasia treatment outcomes. She trains clinicians in counseling skills and interpersonal communication strategies. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us tonight. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everybody. While I pull up my slides, I also want to thank Darlene Williamson, who is part of the NAA and invited me to join you all today. So thank you very much. It's been something I've been looking forward to join you today and talk about stress, depression, resilience, and aphasia. Before we get into it, I want to tell you a little bit about me. So Catherine, thank you for the introduction. And here's some details. I live in Delaware because I work at the University of Delaware. My hometown is Seattle. I have 2 kids. There they are, grumpy on the first day of school. I have 2 dogs. I have 2 cats, 1 spouse, and I like to draw. I love movies, art. I am trying to learn about gardening and plants. I love to swim, and I love pretty much anything to do with water. Those are my kids in the Chesapeake Bay. So that's a little bit about me. So we're talking about stress, depression, and resilience in aphasia. So it's very clear that aphasia can be stressful. We know what we want to say, and sometimes the words just don't come. And that's frustrating. Aphasia can be frustrating when we can't put together what we want to say. It becomes hard to talk to friends and family. And aphasia can come with a lot of changes. Some of those changes are big and some of them are small. But there's a lot of changes with aphasia. And these changes can lead to stress. So sometimes when we have stress, especially stress over a long period of time. It can create a sense of worry, frustration. Over time, stress can create a feeling of tiredness or sadness. Stress may make you feel forgetful, confused, distracted. It also may make you feel nervous or numb or annoyed. Importantly, stress and depression are linked together. They are very closely linked. And they are also very common in aphasia, both chronic stress and depression. So, what are the symptoms of depression? I'm going to list 9 symptoms, and these symptoms may be just a few. You may experience a few of these symptoms or a lot of them, and that still may equal a diagnosis of depression. Well, some of these symptoms are a depressed mood, feeling sad or feeling numb, diminished interest or pleasure in activities. Another symptom is a change in appetite. That could mean feeling like eating a lot more or eating a lot less. There may be difficulty with sleep, wanting to sleep a lot more or unable to sleep very much. People may experience slowed movement. So this slowed movement is not about stroke. It's a different kind of slowed movement that can come with depression. Some people experience fatigue, low energy. Depression can include feeling worthless or feeling guilty. Also, potentially difficulty with concentration. So again, this is not related to stroke, but separate from stroke experience. And there also may be recurrent thoughts of death. So again, all of these symptoms don't need to be present to equal a diagnosis of depression. It may be just some of these. So as I said, depression is common in people with aphasia. Based on some recent research, we believe about 50%, potentially more, people with aphasia have symptoms of depression. But interestingly, people with aphasia who reported more resilience also reported less depressive symptoms. This is interesting. So when I say resilience, what am I talking about? So resilience is about coping with challenge and stress in a healthy way. We've heard in the last few years a lot about resilience, and it's really an important quality. That's something that we can all develop over time. There's been some research and some treatments surrounding resilience. And one model of resilience I'm going to present here. So has 3 components to building resilience. One is about relaxation, so calming our body and brain. Another component is coping or adapting to stress and feeling better. And the third quality is about growth, connection to self and to others. And as it says here at the bottom, there's many related activities that can go within each of these categories. We're going to talk about just a couple. In fact, we'll talk about 2 resilience building activities, just briefly. Get the juices flowing. Some ideas. One idea is called officially behavioral activation. Behavioral activation is a treatment that's been used over the last several decades for depression. Let me back up a little bit. Behavioral activation was created several decades ago, and there was some study and use of this approach for depression for a while. And then it kind of fell out of sight, and people didn't use it as much. But in the last 5 to 10 years or so, people have realized, behavioral activation as a treatment, it works. It works to help with depression and depression symptoms. And there's been some studies, including with people with aphasia, that have shown some promise. So what is this treatment that I'm talking about? So it has some very basic components. One is to monitor mood. And the second is to increase pleasant activities. There's a lot more to it than this, but these are the basics of this treatment. And I think it's important because we all can increase things that we enjoy doing. So the takeaway for us today, it's not the same as the treatment, but we can all do more of what we enjoy. Because doing more of what we enjoy helps us to feel good. Pretty straightforward. So in the past, I've talked with people with aphasia about what they liked to do. What do you do to feel healthy, to feel good? What do you do that you enjoy? Here are some of the answers I heard. Puzzles, photography, music, fishing, pet time, gardening, knitting. I don't know how many of you can see that. It's small, but that is a one-handed knitting tool. So I know several people with aphasia who have struggled with one hand, and they use this type of knitting tool. Pretty cool. Cooking and baking, painting, walking, and just spending time outside. Obviously, there's many more activities that we all like to do that helps us to feel good. So you can kind of think about what activities you enjoy. And that may have changed since your stroke. That may have changed because some of those activities that you used to enjoy, they may be more difficult now, but maybe you've uncovered some new activities. And I'm going to share a little story in a bit about that. So finding new things you enjoy is important. That way you can do more of what you enjoy and feel good. So there's so much more to say about this approach. This is, again, not the treatment itself, but some of the basics of the treatment. And there's several aphasia researchers that are examining this treatment right now. Here's the other one I wanted to share with you. Connecting with others. Connecting with others is another important way that we can build resilience. And that can be in person, of course, but it also can be online, connecting with one another online. Many of you may be involved in groups. aphasia groups or stroke groups or caregiver groups. One of the things that our life with the start of the pandemic meant that online groups grew. And I know that the Aphasia Association has a great list of groups that are available. Hopefully you found some of those useful for you. Obviously, connecting with family is important, but maybe family and friends have changed with time and with the stroke. Many people with aphasia talk about the new friendships that they make, sometimes through the groups that we just mentioned. Maybe you can connect with others through faith-based organizations that are important to you. Maybe interest and activity groups. And volunteering. Volunteering is something that sometimes feels like it's really challenging to find a good fit for volunteering when you are have aphasia and struggle with communication. But there are some volunteering opportunities out there. So connecting with others can be difficult, of course. With aphasia, you may feel uncertain. You may feel embarrassed. The way that you communicate now is different than how you used to communicate. And that's really challenging. It's important. It's difficult, but it's important to, as much as we can and we're able to challenge ourselves. You can think about connection with others like a workout. You know, we go, if we think about workouts, it's to build our body, to make our muscles stronger. And connection and communication can be that workout. It's challenging, like lifting weights, but our communication gets stronger with practice. So we practice communicating to improve. And again, that can be very challenging, but it helps. Connection also can boost your mood. Just connecting with others can really help you feel a bit better. So I promised to tell you a little story. So person that I worked with in the past, Abe, I've changed Abe's name and some details here to protect his confidentiality. So Abe was a rabbi before his stroke. He had a stroke, he had aphasia. In the years that followed his stroke, he was unable to practice as a rabbi. He ended up getting a divorce. He was depressed. He was quite depressed for quite a while. And at some point, he changed. He found something new. He decided to do things differently. He challenged himself. He became very active in a couple of aphasia groups and a large stroke group. And he found he really thrived with that connection. He also discovered something new that he didn't know he liked to do, ceramics. He had no experience with ceramics, but he found it. I don't know how, actually. He found ceramics and found that he really enjoyed it. So actually, right, the photo there, actually I have it here too, is a piece of ceramics that Abe did. I don't know if you can see it. I'm holding it up. There it is. I keep it on my desk. So for him, the connection of the groups, the friendships he made there, and his enjoyment of something new he didn't know he liked really gave him a sense of purpose. He was quite a changed person from when I met him at first, and it took time. but he got there. There are other stories like this. I know another gentleman who struggled with his aphasia, and he found he was an engineer in his life before his stroke. He couldn't return to his work, but he found, if I can go backwards. Oh dear, to really go backwards. So I mentioned the knitting. I don't know if you can see my mouse. He found that someone got, maybe his spouse, someone got him a one-handed knitting tool like this one. He never knit before. He tried it out. He enjoyed it. And you know, when I last spoke with him, he had made probably thousands of knit hats for infants in intensive care in the hospital. So cool. Never knew that he would like to knit, but he tried something new. Okay, thanks for letting me go backwards there. Okay, so in summary, if you feel that you may be depressed, please know that you are not alone. And please talk with your doctor. Second, as much as you can, do more of what you enjoy. Find some new ways. Try some new things. See what you can discover. And as much as you can, connect with others, communicate, be with others, challenge yourself as much as you can. It will help you feel better, and it will help your communication improve. That is it for my presentation. And now I think we have some questions. And I'm so grateful that many of you contributed questions. Oh, there are my references in tiny, tiny font. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop sharing this one. I'm going to make it nice and big, and then I will bring it back so that we can talk about questions and I can type what I'm hearing.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was so interesting. And we have so many questions that were submitted in advance. I think there really is a lot of interest in this topic, and we probably will not get to all of the questions, but we'll certainly try to touch on some of the key areas and themes. So we had an interesting question. Someone wrote, what do you say about experiencing an unconventional grief, mourning the loss of language?
So here's the question, I think. And I think I appreciate this person's idea here. We sometimes talk about grief when we think about loss as in death. And there's other types of grief that are unconventional. And the loss of language that we experience with aphasia is often called an episodic grief. It's a different kind of grief. Let's see if I can type and talk at the same time. Loss of ability to communicate. There's so many things that go with that kind of grief. Identity change, how we feel about ourselves, activities, relationships, jobs, family roles. There's many, many things that a person with aphasia may grieve with the change and the challenge of language and communication. So yes, it's a different type of grief, and it may change over time. as well.
Thank you. I'm reading through some comments that I'd love to share with you. One person says they're a member of Toastmasters, which has improved their speech and leadership, and they're working on writing a memoir. So it sounds like that's a great new activity for them. Someone else, Angie, suggests that depression is great, but finding something that can give you a feeling of importance is key. And she said, great presentation. So thank you. We have a few questions about grief and depression and how to find someone who can support you. Specifically, are there therapists who particularly focus and specialize in aphasia? How do you recommend that people find a good therapist or support person?
This is a wonderful question, and I wish I had so many resources to share, but it's tough. There's not many therapists, mental health wise, that understand and know about aphasia. So that's tough. There are projects right now that are looking to train therapists about communication with people with aphasia. There's a group, there's several groups of researchers that are working on this right now. There's both a US group and there's an international group of aphasiologists, such as, aphasia researchers. They're working on this because right now, again, it is tough. There is not as many therapists as we hope that there should be, there needs to be. So in addition to these projects about training therapists, there's also other treatment research about mental health and well-being interventions for people with aphasia. I'm involved in several of these projects, and I'm hoping in the next few years, we'll have more to share with clinicians about helping people with aphasia related to mental health. I'm sorry for all of the words. That's a lot of words. I'm not doing a very brief job of keyword writing. I hope that answers the question. I wish there was better, more exciting news, but work is in progress.
Thank you. Yeah, and Mara had added in the chat that there's several aphasia centers that have some trained mental health providers in some regions, but as you mentioned, certainly not enough. And someone asked a question, which I think you've answered. They actually asked, can someone with aphasia participate in therapy? And I'll let you answer that question.
So can someone with aphasia participate in therapy? Yes, but it depends. Therapy can often be quite talk heavy. And so this is why training mental health therapists about communication and especially communication strategies. These are important tools for mental health counseling. Let me start a new page. because I'm going over. I'm going to actually copy this one. Hold on. Hold on for technical.
And this is really helpful. And as a reminder to everyone too, the recording of this webinar will be up on YouTube and the National Aphasia Association website. So you can always come back to this as a resource as well.
So in addition to working with therapists, and again, there's not as many therapists as we'd hope there would be. There are interventions, so there's treatments in development. So some of them, I mentioned behavioral activation. There's two groups I know of, no, 3 groups I know of that are working on this. There's another intervention that I'm heavily involved with that's developing, if there are clinicians here in the audience, acceptance and commitment therapy. That's one research team. So some of these are their treatments that can be delivered by speech language pathologists or other clinicians. So there's some promising new approaches. More to come.
So we've talked about depression. On the other side of the coin, we got a couple questions about anxiety. One person wrote, are high levels of anxiety associated with having aphasia and the need for medication?
So anxiety is common. I'm going to actually back up. Anxiety, let me do the diagnostic criteria, or the diagnostic name, general anxiety disorder. It is more common in aphasia than other post-stroke impairment groups. It's like about 24% so far as we know. Something like that. And typically it's much less than that. So, treatment. Talk to your doctor. There are meds that can help. And your doctor will know what works for you, given everything about you. This is true for depression as well. Medication can be a very helpful thing for many people, but it has to be something that you talk with your doctor and find the right thing for you, given your health, your other medications you're taking, and your everything else.
And someone just wrote a question asking which medications, but I would guess that's something that they would need to talk with their doctor about, correct?
Yes, talk with your doctor.
And would you recommend that folks bring a family member or caregiver with them to these appointments when they go?
Thank you for that. bring a family member or friend. And in addition to having someone else that can help bridge communication, you can also record the discussion with your doctor, but ask first. Sometimes it's helpful, even if you have a very faithful friend or family member with you, sometimes it's still helpful to be able to listen or watch the conversation again.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. We have a couple questions about motivation. One person writes, what's the best way to keep me motivated to continue the work of aphasia recovery? And they commented specifically, they're almost 3 years post-stroke.
Boy, what a great question. I'm going to adjust this here. So how to keep motivated? That's really great. So if there are clinicians in the audience, I'll mention that there's an approach called motivational interviewing. This is an approach for a clinician. And really, what it boils down to is something that I think we all can keep in mind. So the basic idea is, what is important to you? Like, what is the most important? So maybe that is family, right? So motivation is, if you go back to, my family is most important to me, so I want to communicate with my family. And sometimes that can be the motivator. So I would ask yourself or your loved one or your clients, like, what is most important to you? What do you want to do? Aphasia is getting in the way. How can we work to improve? The thing about aphasia, let me copy and paste this so I can have a new page. Several years ago, I was working with a woman who was 8 years post stroke. So she lived with aphasia for 8 years. And you know what she said? This has stuck with me for this whole time. This was probably 10 years ago. She said, hold on, let me think. She said, aphasia is like my lawn. I'll say this, I can't see the grass grow, but I have to mow every two weeks. And I thought that was so clear. Like, sometimes we can't tell that change is happening because it can be slow. So I often ask people, think back to maybe 6 months after your stroke, if you're several years from your strokes. Think back in time. What could you do then? And what can you do now? So for many people who have aphasia, if they've had a stroke, they'll see improvement. Other types of aphasia change may be different. But for folks that have had a stroke, improvement can happen with time. So I liked her analogy here because it's true. I can't see my grass grow. I can't see aphasia change from one day to the next day, but often over a longer period of time, we see that change. So that can be motivation.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We have a interesting comment and then question in the chat. I'm going to read from Trish. Hi, Trish. Dr. Harmon's main conclusion, quote, findings suggest that strong negative emotions can interfere with semantic lexical processing by diverting attentional resources to emotion regulation. And that's from 2021. And what I'm interpreting there is your mood can actually impact your aphasia recovery and ability to participate in your therapies. And so Trish asks, what do you think?
Oh, Trish, thanks for that question. So, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his first name. Tyson Harmon has worked in negative emotions and language processes. Others, Dina Schwen Blackett also has looked at strong negative emotions and language processes. And it's true. It looks to be that when we have strong negative emotions, we may not have as many resources to help move our language forward. So it's also, there's some other work about acute stress and language production that's called the linguistic anxiety. And if we think about it, it makes sense. Anybody, doesn't matter if it's aphasia or not, when we feel stress or strong emotions, we don't communicate well. Words don't come to us as easily. So it makes sense. So this is why we talk a lot about reduce stress, manage strong feelings over time. Strong feelings aren't bad, but if we have a lot of strong feelings over time, might be a bit of depression or something similar. So both of these things can help with communication. Thanks for bringing that up, Trish.
We had another question submitted, and I think that you touched on this, but just to clarify, someone wouldn't necessarily need medication if they're having some changes in mood. There are some non-medical or non-medication ways or non-pharmacological ways to improve your mood that are effective, correct?
Of course. There's many ways to help improve mood. Medication is one. So we talked about doing activities that help feel good. We can also talk about exercise. So many things about exercise. Boost mood, release endorphins. Endorphins, yeah. Help thinking. There's so many things about exercise in addition to just health. And there are other things we can do. You know, the connection, we talked about connection can help mood. Gratitude can help. Reframing strong feelings. That's a whole nother talk. Mindfulness activities, and it goes on. So medication is not the only thing, but it's one that I want to mention because it can be a help to many people. But it should never be, well, I shouldn't say never. It's helpful, especially when you can combine it with some of these other things. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, talk therapy. We already talked about how it's limited availability, but caregivers, please seek out Above helps, and you can do talk therapy. Caregivers have special challenges, and we need to take care of them too.
Thank you for adding that. We did get a couple questions about the stress that this has on caregivers and family members of people with aphasia as well. And hopefully some of the suggestions that you've mentioned throughout the talk can apply to them as well. It feels like this might be the perfect segue into our announcement about the wellness challenge that the National Aphasia Association is doing.
Sounds great.
All right. So we are pretty excited about this. As we mentioned, so our Ask the Expert series is focusing on mental health and wellness. And the National Aphasia Association is actually launching a wellness challenge as well this fall. And it's to honor the memory of Audrey Holland. So Rebecca, in case folks aren't familiar with Dr. Holland, could you share a little bit about her and why she's so important to the aphasia community?
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I met Dr. Audrey Holland a couple of times, but I know so many people, people that are clinicians, are researchers of aphasia, and people with aphasia themselves who have been impacted by Audrey Holland's work. So she passed very recently, and I'm going to read this little bit that Catherine wrote up. Or maybe it was you, Darlene. Dr. Audrey L. Holland, so 1933 to 2023, was a clinician, researcher, and teacher in the field of speech-language pathology and aphasia. She was a pioneer in the field of aphasia, focusing on finding ways to take care of the whole person and live a fulfilling life with aphasia. There's a picture of her that's pretty recent. Oh, she was the Ask the Expert webinar presenter just 2 short years ago.
Yeah, and you can still see the recording of that on our website or the YouTube channel. So please check that out. So, Rebecca, want to share what the challenge is?
So Catherine and I were chuckling because the challenge so perfectly fits with some of the content from today. The challenge is to do at least one positive thing for yourself this fall. Any small act that makes you feel good. Maybe it's something that starts a healthy habit that contributes to your well-being. So I wanted to share mine that I'm thinking of for this wellness challenge. At the beginning, I talked about that I like to draw. And when I draw, I usually spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But I noticed when I do just that little bit of drawing, when I'm done, I feel good. So I think I might do a daily drawing challenge for myself because it makes me feel good. That's might be what I do. Still thinking about it. So the challenge is going to start as of tomorrow and will go until mid-November.
Yes, and I just put in the chat, what are some ideas that you all have for the wellness challenge? So feel free as we're talking to add some comments of what you might do. And there's lots of ideas. It could be something for physical wellness, perhaps a walk or chair yoga. Rebecca, what could they do for intellectual wellness? Any ideas?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it can take so many forms. So intellectual wellness can be hard if we struggle with reading or with understanding spoken language. But it can be something like listening to beautiful music that's complex and makes us think. I was listening to Beethoven today. Is anyone else a Beethoven fan? And I was like, man, that guy really knew what he's doing. Like, I wish I had that kind of ability. So it's a different kind of an intellectual wellness, but I don't know if that helps. That was first thing that came to mind.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Or even like a podcast. I saw Angie was here. We've got the Brain Friends podcast about aphasia. Folks could listen to that.
That's a tremendous podcast. Angie, she knows. I will always cheer for the Brain Friends.
I know, still hoping for some swag someday. Oh, and Angie adds Zumba and the Arch conference. So, and yeah, there's lots of conversation groups we had mentioned. The National Aphasia Association has some great ones. I actually run an aphasia and wellness conversation group every month. I know Aphasia Cafe is going to be talking about wellness next month. So lots and lots of ideas. Let's see, there's other notes coming in. Music. Oh, another podcast, Slow Road to Better podcast. So lots of different things. I've been thinking, we have a little keyboard in our house, and once in a while I'll play, and I notice it makes me feel a little bit more calm and just focuses my mind on getting the right notes and sometimes singing along a little bit. And so I'm hoping to maybe start doing that a little bit more regularly, even if it's just 5 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be some big time commitment. So that's what I'm thinking.
It doesn't need to be running a marathon unless you're into running marathons. Then
Yeah, I mean, we know some people who bike across America, right? So could be anything. So I'm seeing some more ideas coming in, and starting tomorrow, there will be a form on the National Aphasia Association website. The link will also be shared in upcoming newsletters, and keep your eye out on social media. But if you want to share what you are doing for the wellness challenge, you can submit the online form. And again, that will be on there starting tomorrow. And it's running through November. So you've got lots of time. All
This is really
right.
cool.
Oh, I see we've got something from Darlene's chiming in. She's going to open my slider, step outside first thing each morning, take some deep breaths, and have a moment of gratitude. I love that. What
So
a
good.
great morning routine and ritual.
Thank you for that sketch a day recommendation. Appreciate that. I don't know that app, so I'm going to check it out.
All right. Well, we're really excited about the Audrey Holland Wellness Challenge. We hope you are too. And thank you again, Rebecca, for spending your time with us tonight and for all the great recommendations that you gave. A couple people had asked throughout the presentation, and yes, you can certainly rewatch this webinar. It'll be available soon on our website and on YouTube. You can find more information on Rebecca's work. It's the Aphasia and Rehabilitation Outcomes Lab. And she said that the best place to find her is social media. So check her out, check them out on Instagram at UDAROLAB. And then for Facebook, search the UD Aphasia and Rehabilitation Outcomes Lab.
We are not great at keeping these as updated as we need to. You can also find our website. I put it in the chat. It's just udarolab.com. Another spot for us.
Thank you. For more information on the National Aphasia Association, you can find us at aphasia.org. And to see our upcoming virtual events, visit aphasia.org/online events. And that has information about the Ask the Experts, Aphasia Cafe, and the conversation groups that we've mentioned a couple times as well. Our next Ask the Expert webinar will be Thursday, October 12th, and I'll be talking with Dr. Carol Prasad of the University of Michigan about aphasia and counseling. And finally, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about Ask the Expert, you can email me. My email is catherine@aphasia.org. So thank you again, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Best of luck as we kick off the Wellness Challenge. We look forward to hearing about what you all are doing. Take care, be well, and we'll see you next month for Ask the Expert.
Thanks so much, Catherine.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.